Hello and welcome to Harry Cole Saves the West, the show where American grit meets British backbone. Coming up tonight from Washington DC, Trump's plan to finish the job in Venezuela. And Gen Z, the so-called woke generation, are the kids actually all right? But first, politics has never been more polarised on either side of the Atlantic. Left versus right, not over ideas, but out of pure tribal spite. And nowhere is that clearer than Washington's ongoing melodrama, the government shutdown. 15 days and counting, with the Democrats voting again today against reopening the government. It's a standoff. Congress bickers, agencies freeze, and ordinary Americans, from border agents to civil servants, get stuck in the crossfire. But my guest tonight says enough is enough. Senator Ron Johnson from the great state of Wisconsin wants to end government shutdowns forever. His plan would stop the chaos and force Washington to live within its means. Joining me from Wisconsin tonight, Senator Ron Johnson. Welcome to Harry Cole Saves the West. Senator, tell us the plan. It does strike me as slightly mad that you go through this cycle of shutdowns every couple of years. To the rest of the world, it looks kind of crazy. Why do you want to stop it, and how will you do it?
Well, it's way more than slightly mad, and we do this every year. No, it's a very simple solution. It's modeled on what we do in Wisconsin to pass this bill back in the 1950s. It's called the Eliminate Shutdowns Act, and if you haven't funded all of government or an individual department, you don't shut government down, you don't shut down that department, you just funded it at last year's levels. You establish 2-week-long rolling continuing appropriations to fund that agency until an appropriation or continuing resolution is passed for that agency. It's just that simple. There's nothing else to it. There's no political advantage to it. Unfortunately, every Democrat voted against it, and unfortunately, many Republican appropriators voted against it. They said it would undercut the vaunted appropriation process. I've been here 15 years. We should have passed 180 appropriation bills prior to the end of fiscal year that was going to fund. You know how many of those 180 we passed on time? 6.
Wow.
So the vaunted appropriation process has a 96.7% failure rate. And that's the appropriation process they said my Eliminate Shutdown Act would undercut. No, this is absurd. There's no reason for this. There's no reason for this shutdown right now. I mean, this is, House has already passed a continuing resolution. It funds government at President Biden's levels. The funding levels the Democrats themselves voted for, they voted for continuing resolutions dozens and dozens of times. They just won't do it now. Their demand is, well, we'll give you a 4-week continuing resolution. All we ask is $1.5 trillion additional spending when we're already $37 trillion in debt. So again, this is beyond absurd. But that's Washington D.C., this alternate universe.
If you keep budget set at last year's budget, doesn't that remove some of the ability to try and tackle spending, to reduce spending? It's never really going to go backwards if you only ever reduce it to where it is now, right?
Well, currently, again, this looks dysfunctional, and it is, but this is actually a very well-honed process by the uniparty, the big spenders in both parties. They create these crises. They pass continuing resolutions right before a holiday break. A couple people produce a 2,000-page appropriation bill, drop it on our desk and say, well, if you want to go home for Christmas, we got to pass this thing. And unfortunately, enough people vote for it, it passes, and that's why we're $37 trillion in debt. So no, everything is stacked right now for spending more money than we can afford. This would at least give us some measure of leverage to say, no, we'll just spend at last year's levels. We're not going to increase them, because every year we increase spending.
Exactly. You say some of your Republican colleagues voted against your bill. Why do they want to keep this, keep this sort of rolling chaos? Is it the fact that actually, they're not going to be, possibly will be in opposition one day, and it's quite a useful tool for oppositions, especially when they don't control the Senate, they don't control the House, to actually be able to do anything to put a spanner in the works, isn't it? They want to keep the political games, is what you're saying?
They view the appropriation process as sacred, sacrosanct. Right. You can't, we need to do everything we can to put pressure on us to make sure we pass appropriation bills, which I guess would be fine if you did them on time. But as I said, we've only passed 6 out of 180 since I've been here over the last 15 years. So it's a massive failure rate. And again, setting up an automatic continuing rolling appropriation doesn't hamper their ability to pass appropriation bills. Doesn't hamper that at all. Now, figure out the areas of agreement. I mean, right now the Senate passed a Veterans Affairs military construction bill, combined a couple other appropriation bills as a minibus. That passed the Senate. Looks like that's going to come to the House. Again, that was an area of agreement. So you go do the easy stuff first. Focus on the heirs agreement and leave the other stuff till the end. But in the meantime, don't shut down government. Don't waste time with all this political wrangling. There's nothing, there's no purpose behind it at all, other than create deadlines to increase spending.
15 days in, it doesn't look like anyone's willing to back down now. It's payday tomorrow for tens of millions of workers across America who are going to be struggling with their bills and struggling with their mortgages and their rent. How long do you think this will last? And do you think the public pressure is starting to turn on both parties over the shutdown?
Yeah, my guess, pressure will build on both sides, even though this really is the Schumer shutdown. They could open the government today. Yeah. We just would have voted for the continuing resolution the House passed. But I've got a solution for the pay issue. It's called the Shutdown Fairness Act. If we force people to work, and we force people to work, we call them essential, so they got to work, this will just pay those people we force to work. I mean, what could be more common sense? The fact of the matter is, people that get furloughed, they generally get back pay. So we're going to pay them anyway. So might as well make them work. We might as well pay them while they work, while we figure out how to fund the rest of the agency.
If you were a betting man, sir, how long do you reckon this is going to last? Or are we still going to be in this situation next week? I've got a very young nephew who's very keen to visit the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., visiting the back end of next week. Is he going to be able to see the spaceships?
I wouldn't have him come next week. Yeah, this is kind of uncharted territory. Generally Republicans, kind of digging our heels in, saying, no, we got to spend less. Democrats just want to spend more. This is unusual, where the Democrats are causing a shutdown and demanding to spend a whole lot more. We're generally digging our heels and saying we have to spend less. This is a shutdown because the Democrats want to spend $1.5 trillion more.
Do you think the Republicans are doing a good enough job, though, in convincing the public that this is the Democrats' work? Because given what most people hear, certainly around the world as well, when they look at it, it's go, well, the Republicans control the House, they control the Senate. This has got to be on them, though. What more can you do to be making those points? Because you both seem to be getting the blame.
Well, again, we don't control the Senate because we need Democrats to join us to pass a bill with 60 votes. So we don't control it. We have majority, but we don't control it. Now, I think Republicans, by and large, have been pretty good, doing a good job messaging this. The problem is Democrats have the legacy media in their back pocket. And so they can always rely on the media to pretty well back up their position and put the blame on Republicans, which is why I think the American public is somewhat evenly split. They're not getting the straight scoop out of the legacy media.
Senator, moving to topic slightly, you were one of around half a dozen senators who had their phone records, the metadata of their calls accessed by the FBI during the investigation into Jan 6 and around that. What's the latest on that? How did that make you feel? And do you agree with your colleague, Senator Grassley, who says this is worse than Watergate? It
is worse than Watergate. Watergate was a third-rate burglary into the DNC headquarters. This is a egregious violation of separation of powers, really conducted against all Republicans, by and large. Not just 8 members, but or 9 members. I think 92 different Republican organizations, including the Republican Attorneys General's Association and Charlie Kirk's Turning Point. So again, this is they're casting a broad net. I don't know exactly what the purpose, what the predicate was. We just know it happened. What we need to do is we need Kash Patel and Pam Bondi to do a rigorous internal investigation and then turn over all those records, all the people who are involved, over to Congress so we can do our own investigation, hold hearings, hold deposed interviews. And if we see criminal activity, then we will refer that to the Justice Department for criminal prosecutions. But I don't want to start with criminal investigation because that just bottles up all the information. And the most important thing here is letting the American people know exactly what happened.
Given the accusations that are flying around Washington at the moment of lawfare and a judicial overreach, this strikes me as spectacular hypocrisy from the previous administration, yes?
Well, that is the definition of the Democrat Party. They are a bunch of hypocrites. So, yeah, no doubt about it.
Listen, Senator, I just want to play you a clip from President Obama, who was out and about yesterday. Let's have a listen to see what he had to say.
We don't want kangaroo courts and trumped up charges. That's what happens in other places that we used to scold for doing that. We want like our court system and our Justice Department and our prosecutors to be, and our FBI to be just playing things straight and looking at the facts and not meddling in politics the way we've seen lately.
He could be talking about his own side there. Does that strike you? It strikes me as a man that's starting to sound a little bit nervous about the possibility of indicted himself. Could you see that? Is that the way things are going? This lawfare genie doesn't look like it's going any back in the bottle anytime soon, and sounds to me like the Democrats are starting to worry.
It's galling to listen to President Obama talk that way. I mean, he is the one who really began the weaponization of these federal agencies against his political opponents. When you take a look at, again, he knew what the Steele dossier was, a Hillary Clinton dirty trick. He allowed his intelligence agencies to set up the Mueller investigation. He never said a word about it. So when you take a look at what Clinton, Biden, their merry band of radical leftists that's served and supported them, the damage they have done to our democracy. I mean, Russia and China could only dream of interfering in our elections to the extent that Obama and Biden and that cast of characters really interfered. I mean, the damage done to this democracy is incalculable. So no matter what kind of crimes they may have committed, what they could be convicted of, the punishment won't even come close to making up for the damage they did to America.
Is the answer, though, pursuing them? I mean, could you not step back slightly? Could the administration here not step back slightly and say, look, enough, we need to stop this on both sides. Everything's gone too far. A sort of clean slate. President Trump, has called for, in the past, for unity and to come together and for the nation to heal. Is it going to be able to heal when, one party's voted out of power and spends the next 4 years trying to fight charges?
Well, again, prosecuting people for criminal interference in our election process is not the same as lawfare and weaponization of the agencies. I mean, when you have Letitia James running for office saying, I'm going to get Trump on something no matter what, that's not the way the Justice Department is supposed to work here. And of course, then they indict him and convict him of all kinds of trumped-up charges. So again, it's not equivalent. I don't want to see lawfare from a Republican standpoint, but I want to see these people held accountable, and if they committed crimes, they should be prosecuted and convicted. Yes, perhaps Letitia James should have focused perhaps a little bit more on her own paperwork than other people's. Senator, I just want to draw your attention to an ongoing scandal in the United Kingdom at the moment concerning Chinese espionage. Now, look, we don't have to get into the nitty-gritty of the case, but essentially the accusation faced by the British government is they've allowed a spying trial to collapse in order to protect trade with China. Obviously, it's a hot topic in this country as well. Would you like to see America's allies taking a tougher stance on the East in the way that Donald Trump is? We have to understand how China has just stolen all of our intellectual property, the way they are engaged in economic warfare against the West. And again, I would like to see China prosperous, but I want them playing by the rules. They're not playing by the rules, and they're doing a great deal of harm to all of our economies. We've got to stand together as allies and say, this has to stop. You got to start following the rules. And they're not doing that right now. They are committing crimes across the world. Senator Johnson, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Thank you again. Joining me in the studio throughout this evening's show is Adrian Gray, back, a friend of Harry Cole Saves the West, and a little birdie tells me about to launch our own new show. Fascinating stuff there from the Senator Johnson on the just the staggering hypocrisy of the Democrats. Obama does strike me as sounding a little bit nervous there that perhaps, Trump keeps mentioning him with the Russiagate stuff, the Steele dossier, bringing in the FBI, to politicizing the FBI. Can you see a world, what are you hearing from Trump world, in which a former president is indicted?
I would love to see that. I know a lot of other people would love to see that. I don't know if we will see it, but we're in a position now that we're most likely to see it. We also see Hillary Clinton dotting her I's and crossing her T's. She came out kissing Trump's butt, to put it bluntly, as she should, and I think she should be just as nervous, if not more. So it's interesting. It's interesting to see what's shaking up now.
But doesn't Obama have a point, is that America is slightly above, Banana Republic style locking up of political opponents once they've lost the office? Call me old-fashioned. I like to think this is a job for the voters rather than the prosecutors.
Absolutely. I mean, the corruption doesn't end, and we've seen it in the entire Biden administration as well with the auto pen. Will we get answers? Now that he has a health crisis, it's sort of this sympathizing role, right, surrounding him where, maybe we might not see these people come to justice because he could be potentially dying of cancer. So there's a lot of interesting things that happen, I feel like culturally, that affect people's psychology, the psychology of it all. But I would like to see it all happen. I would like to see it all brought to justice.
But then if the Republicans lose the House in the midterms next year, they're not. The Democrats are going to be back to hauling him into investigations, going for another impeachment, really going for it. I mean, when does this stop?
Well, you're exactly right. And hopefully we don't lose. I think that's important for everybody to have the foresight to keep fighting, to keep understanding that we need to show up, we need to win. But I don't see this ending. Again, they continue to do things. They shut down the government yet again. That is showing us that they are playing with people's lives and paychecks. They don't care. They've repeatedly voted no in the shutdown. So we see time and time again, they can't read the room. Right now, they're playing politics. They're playing to the far left, to AOC, to her base, and they're shooting themselves in the foot for the upcoming elections.
Well, there's plenty more to discuss there in a moment. Stay there, Adrian. Let's talk about remarkable scenes yesterday at the White House. Charlie Kirk was posthumously given the Medal of Freedom. It would have been his 32nd birthday yesterday had he not been tragically assassinated last month. Across America, conservative group held Charlie Kirk Day events. Joining me now is his long-term collaborator and friend, Jobob from Turning Point USA. Jobob, thank you for joining us. Look, remarkable scenes, as I say, there at the White House, but I think almost more remarkable is what's happening across the country. It's clear that any plan to silence Charlie Kirk has fallen rather flat.
Yeah, I think the American people as a whole, not even just the conservative movement, but the broader American public is starting to realize the stranglehold that the left-wing media has had on them in pushing the narratives whatever direction they'd like it to go. Because the thing that I think conservatives are fighting for right now, and I love your idea of saving the West, is we're fighting for reality, right? Reality at the end of the day bats last, and reality ultimately will win out. And the more you get people to see what is actually going on and see what's going on in front of their very own eyes, the more that they're going to start realizing that, oh, wow, this is what the country is supposed to be. This is the direction that it has gone. And ultimately, we need to get back on track. And we do that by, again, exposing the crazy lies from the left and getting people to understand that reality exists and we have to operate within it.
There's an expression that Nigel Farage in the United Kingdom uses, that there's something happening out there. There is a turning point approaching. Mm-hmm. Do you see that across the sort of young conservative movement, across the campuses? Well, obviously, we've seen horrific scenes of, sort of anti-Semitic protests and kids cosplaying as Hamas fighters in liberal universities across the United States. But then on the other side of the coin, we are seeing, people picking up Charlie's microphone and trying to have a debate. Are you excited about that?
Yeah, well, again, what I think is actually happening is you're losing, not you, the media itself is losing its ability to direct the narrative in the way that they want it to go. There were only people on college campuses protesting for terrorism for some reason because they thought that was the mainstream position, because the mainstream media allowed that to be a mainstream position. But the more I think people recognize and realize that, holy cow, the crazies on college campuses are really kind of a fringe minority, and the actual majority of people, as galvanized by the assassination of Charlie Kirk, realize that, no, we're actually the majority. I mean, Trump coined the term 10 years ago, the silent majority, and that's true. And the silent majority, I think, is continuing to wake up each and every day here in the United States. Among the conservative movement as a whole, obviously, I think that the tragic situation that we experienced with Charlie's assassination has, again, galvanized, especially the young people who aren't so indoctrinated that they can change their mind and become more realism focused and carry the mantle for what Charlie fought for throughout his life. So
what's the plan? Obviously, it announced today that Erica Kirk, Charlie's widow, and now the boss of your organisation, will be joining J.D. Vance on the speaking tours, on the campus tours. So what's the plan? Basically, what are they going to be, sort of arena style events?
Well, we only have to do arenas because that's the only place that people can fit, right? The lines are out the door. I did an event last week in North Dakota, and in a small town in North Dakota, it's a 2,500 seat theater, and there was no room left. So the reason we have to do arenas is because that's the amount of people that are showing up. And even then, unfortunately, people are being turned away. If I could say something specifically, though, about Erica, in the face of unbelievable tragedy, I cannot be more impressed by the way that she's held herself, by how she's spoken. The address that she gave at Charlie's memorial or his ceremony yesterday for receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom was unbelievable and directly in line with the conservative values that the country was founded on. She invoked the Constitution. I then responded on our show today talking about the Declaration of Independence and where man's rights come from. And again, that's a broader idea of what the West is and what American values are. And the fact that Erica has a firm understanding of that puts Turning Point again, in a tragic situation, really in a very, very good position going forward.
It's vindication from the very top there yesterday, and obviously JD Vance, I suspect, perhaps also with one eye on the elections in primaries in a couple of years' time, is obviously out and about the country more. But I mean, you couldn't have asked for a sort of bigger vindication for Charlie's legacy, and obviously President Trump declaring his birthday Charlie Kirk Memorial Day. Would you like to see that as becoming an annual event?
I think it will become whether the government recognizes it or not. I think the American people understand the gravity of this. I hope federally it's recognized as a significant day. But also, I think that the legacy that Charlie left is bigger than whatever the government can deem as this specific day we're honoring Charlie Kirk. I think Charlie Kirk's legacy is going to live on in perpetuity, and I think the American people will October 14th as a celebration of his life, whether the government recognizes it or not.
Charlie represented the sort of next wave of conservatism, unapologetic, tech-savvy, articulate, young. Where does that leave the sort of traditional Republican movement? It feels to me that Turning Point is almost becoming a sort of vehicle in itself that's replacing the traditional GOP.
Well, I think Charlie understood better than anybody else that the conservative movement as a whole needs to have as much variety as possible, because conservatives can disagree on various topics, and we've seen that over the course of the last several years, but also still come together as a cohesive unit and a coalition. I am a comedian by trade. Like I am not a hard debater like Charlie was. And Charlie knew that and understood that, yeah, there's different paths, different avenues that people take to come to the conservative movement, whether they get brought in through comedy, entertainment, the arts, the debates that Charlie did on campus. He understood that it took a whole different group of people to form the coalition. And so going forward and continuing to go forward, yeah, I kind of think the old way of doing things is gone and is going to continue to give up its last vestige of hold that they have on the conservative movement in terms of the old way of doing things. And I think this new way of understanding what the conservative coalition is, which is a broad and encompassing group of people, is going to be the way forward. And nobody championed that like Charlie has.
Charlie always says laughter could do more damage to the left than anger ever could. Presumably that's where you come in. Is that the sharpest tool that the right have against the left? I mean, it's kind of, you're like shooting fish in a barrel, really, for you, isn't it? Like, you've plenty of material to go for with the left.
Well, yeah, there's no shortage of material out there. I don't know that it's necessarily the sharpest tool, because obviously Charlie had a much bigger reach than I do, because I sit up there and make wisecracks. But I believe, I don't want to misquote, I think Thomas More said, the devil can't bear to be mocked, which really is, I think, the way that you have these turning points in people. There's only a certain amount of, droning on about policy that people can take. And while that's incredibly important, the people on the peripheries tend to become attracted to what the conservative movement is saying if humor is at the forefront of it. And again, that's what Charlie understood. That's why I'm a part of the fold. And it's just a further addition to the overall conservative movement.
Well, don't say you don't get everything on Harry Cole Saves the West. Thomas More quote, I think you get a prize for being the first person to quote Thomas More on our show. And you're doing yourself down. Clearly an intellectual as well as a comedian. Jobob from Turning Point UK, thank you for joining us tonight. Adrian's still with me. That point there about the GOP old guard being replaced by this sweeping movement. We're going to go to a break in a sec, but 30 seconds. Has the old establishment realised that they're being usurped, so to speak?
Yeah, and I think President Trump was, him and Charlie Kirk were in lockstep, right? They both had the same ideas of bringing in making the conservative movement, like he was saying, talking about having different points of view, because there's a lot of nuance on the conservative side, right-wing political aisle. That's because we're so highly intelligent.
there we go. Well, look, you did get to us more. Anyway, time for a break, but coming back, you won't want to miss this. 3 strikes in 6 weeks, 6 dead of the latest hit. What is going on in Venezuela? Don't move. This one's going to be explosive. Welcome back to Harry Cole Saves the West. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, where there's all sorts of exciting additional content. Harry Cole Saves the West on YouTube. Now, the Trump administration's shock and awe diplomacy rolls on this week, and tonight, even more high drama. Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth is making an unexpected stop in Britain, having to emergency landing with a cracked windscreen. He'd been in Brussels, giving Trump's toughest warning yet to Putin: stop meddling in Ukraine or face the consequences. Meanwhile, US firepower has been flashing off the coast of Venezuela. This time, it's Trump's war on the narco-terrorists. Trump's made the plan very clear. Finished the job. Yesterday, 6 dead in a boat strike. Not diplomacy, but kinetic action. Have a look at this. Boom. And 1 month ago, another strike. Boom. And 6 weeks ago, yet more action. You guessed it. Here we go. Boom. Crush the cartels, deny Iran, Russia and China a foothold, and if needed, take out Venezuela's Maduro. In a moment, we'll hear from Defence Priorities Foundation's Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis on how America might take down that rogue regime. But first, I'm joined by Katarina Szulc, the host of the Borderlands Podcast, who's going to fill us in with exactly what's going on. Christina, you've covered Latin America. You know what's going on with these narco-terrorists. What's Trump's plan, and is it going to escalate, do you feel, from taking out these boats?
It's definitely going to escalate, because today we just found out in a New York Times report that the CIA is now conducting covert operations in Venezuela and the Southern Caribbean. Now, this is not something new. We have seen before the CIA working either bilaterally or independently in Latin and Central America when it comes to targeting the narcos, the drug cartels. We've even been seeing this over the last couple of months in Mexico, particularly transferring fugitives from Mexico into the US. But this is a little bit different in Venezuela, because we're seeing high-level military action. And truth be told, we're not getting a ton of information on who is being targeted in those strikes. Okay, we know that they're narco boats, and they allegedly are carrying meth and fentanyl from Venezuela and other Central American countries into Mexico to then be distributed across the United States. But we're not getting names of who these individuals are. And the reason I bring this up is because, of course, I have reported on this extensively, from high level to the lowest level of narcos or foreign terrorists. And we've seen names in press releases, on the OFAC press releases, you name it, no matter who it is, okay? A Mexican national who's trafficking arms from El Paso into Juarez, Mexico, we get their full name. Here, we're not hearing any names of, I think it's around 27 people who have been killed already.
27 killed, yes, so far. Could it be that they don't know the names of these people? And the fact is that we're going to discuss the legality of it all in a moment, is these boats are being identified purely on what they're up to rather than who's on them. And are they confident that these actually are narco boats? As there's been some suggestion that one of them was a fishing boat.
See, that's where I have a bit of an issue, because I think that when we're targeting these narco terrorists, there are a lot of people who operate side by side with them, okay? And let's say in an ideal world that these boats are all narco vessels, okay, take them out. But it's unclear, and we're not being given this information as to, okay, how many kilos of drugs were on this boat? Which cartel are they operating with? Which part of Mexico were they destined to, in order to identify which cartel is distributing these drugs? And I'm sure that if this administration is confident about who they're attacking and that these boats are narco vessels, they would have all those answers for us. I mean, This is what I'm focused on every single day of my life. And I'm given this information 90% of the time. This is one of the few times where I don't see any of it. I'm not being given any of it.
Where do you think this goes next? Obviously, you referenced those reports we're hearing today of an escalation. There's a $50 million bounty for the capture of Maduro. Donald Trump is saying, finish the job. What do you think finish the job looks like? And how?
I think finish the job means an increase in these strikes. I think we're going to see, there's already 10,000 troops deployed to this region. And I think this means we may see full-on combat. This is going to be that boots on the ground operation that a lot of us were waiting for when these cartels were designated FTOs in January. And I think until the Trump administration can show the public that they have made some sort of tangible dent in narco trafficking from Latin America into the United States, they won't stop at anything.
It feels like Venezuela, kind of see the direction of travel this is going. Can you put any flesh on the bones of this alleged offer by the Venezuelan government to give the US a majority stake in their oil if they call off the dogs?
I don't think that's enough for this administration. There's so many there are so many things that they're interested in here, and sure, oil is certainly always one of them. But I think more than anything, and what we've seen particularly with this administration since January, is that they want to make a difference and a visceral difference within the public perception of how they deal with the war on drugs. And this is kind of the first time in history where we are seeing very transparent, to a degree, operations taking place outside of the United States in terms of tackling the war on drugs, and doing it in a way where other international governments, albeit Venezuela or Mexico, are simply not fully involved in these U.S. ops.
Katarina Szulc of the Borderlands Podcast. Come back and tell us how it goes when inevitably it seems this does escalate. Thank you for joining us tonight. Now, in the studio, Adrian's still with me, but Colonel Davis for the Deep Dive, the Daniel Davis Deep Dive show on YouTube. Have I got that right?
You do, yes, thank you.
This isn't very America first, is it? Regime change in South America. This is back to the 70s, right?
I don't know what it's back to. I'm not sure what is actually going on, but it definitely isn't America first, because this has nothing to do with American national interest. It doesn't have anything to do with American security, because all this is, frankly, is for show. You have all these great videos that are really dramatic, etc., but we have no earthly idea, as your previous guest just said. Yeah. Who are these people? Are they actually narco-terrorists? We don't even know. Other than the claim, we don't have any knowledge at all. And these things are so small, these just individual small boats. That's not the way most of the drugs are even moved around. A lot of it in the air, a lot of it through other places. There's no evidence this is actually stopping the drugs at all. It's just flashy TV.
Colonel, you've called out the Pentagon over your career in the past. Are you saying this is for show for the American public or a show of force for Maduro?
Oh, definitely for the American public. Now, I'm sure that Maduro has definitely got his interest because he knows he could be on the receiving end of one of those bombs, but it's not accomplishing anything except for making the Trump administration look tough to the American people.
And do you agree with the previous guest there, Katarina, who said this is going to escalate? This is going to twofold. Is this going to escalate, and should this escalate?
Well, I have real concerns that it may escalate, because you can't go messing with the narco, all the cartels, and think they're going to do nothing. They have been showing pretty conclusively with governments throughout the region that if they get pushed hard enough, they will push back, and in ways that you don't like, and in really ugly ways and violent ways. And I fear that we may just be, poking a dragon here and getting fire back in our own face in ways that we may not like. And again, it may escalate the issue with drugs, not tamp it down.
America's got into trouble in South America for, in the past, in some very high-profile cases. Do you think this could be a major strategic mistake by the president? And do you think he really realizes that?
I definitely don't think he realizes it. I think that he is kind of thinking that everything he touches, I think he perceives himself as the Midas touch, and he tells everybody he's solved 7 wars, now 8, etc. This whole issue with the Gaza thing in the Middle East, and he solved that. Now he's trying to solve the Russia-Ukraine war, and now he's doing this stuff here. And I think all we're doing is exploding all the danger and the risk, but this has, and I don't see any fundamental possibility of this actually accomplishing anything good for the American people.
I imagine in the Pentagon there's some clucking lawyers, right, that kind of feel this is probably, not the most legally watertight operation the Americans have conducted.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of things in that category.
Yeah.
But there's no legality to this whatsoever. They just want to do it. They're doing it. I mean, by all rights, if you think that there's, narco-terrorism going on, that there's drugs, then there are international laws that you interdict them. If you have this intelligence that can tell you so precisely what these people are doing and where it's going, then you interdict them. You bring in vessels that can stop them, you capture them, then you actually say, all right, we're going to get intelligence from these guys. Where did you come from? Where is this going? That's what you do if you actually want to stop the drug trade. But if all you do is blow it up and nobody knows who this stuff is, there's no proof whatsoever this is stopping anybody, it looks more like it's just for show.
There's reporting today that Maduro is very firmly in the American government's sights now. There's a $50 million bounty already, playing devil's advocate, and they are going for regime change. Colonel, how would they do it? What scale of intervention would you need, do you reckon, in Venezuela to topple what looks like a pretty shaky regime down there?
Yeah, I don't know how shaky it is, though. I mean, we tried this in the first Trump administration with Juan Guaido and all that, and all these huge protests that were going on, and we tried to support the opposition, and that fell flat. We ended up being humiliated and didn't get it done. Now it seems like we're trying again. Now then, with this peace prize going to this opposition leader, it seems like we're trying to ingratiate ourselves with her.
Well, she seems pretty keen on an intervention.
Oh, of course, just like Guaido was before that. Yeah, so of course they want that. They want to use the U.S. military to accomplish what they can't do on the ground, and that is regime change to get Maduro out of there. And if you are even thinking about doing something like that, you've got to have a lot more military power than what we've got in the region right there. Otherwise, all you're doing is just stirring up a hornet's nest, and you're not going to accomplish the goal anyway.
What would you do, though? I mean, it's obviously clearly a menace and a threat, and you could make the argument that it is America first because these drugs are actually affecting, domestic Americans. What would you do?
No, if I'm doing America first, I am going to do what I can to stop the flow of drugs coming into the United States. I'm going to do something to get after the demand side of that. Why do we have such a demand for it? That's what you got. That's where you can actually do something here. But to even toy with regime change is disastrous and the opposite of America first, because it could get you sucked into yet another regime change war that ends up disastrously. So I would not do it at all.
What if, though, you, me, a couple of guys, we get that $50 million from the State Department. Do you reckon we could get in and out of Venezuela, kidnap Maduro, get him to the United States, claim the money, and still have any change left over from that $50 million? Surely there's people having this exact same conversation across America. Seems like the perfect plan, right?
Well, it's really good on paper, but when you actually try to do it on the ground, it'll be a little bit different of a story. Because if there's one thing, however corrupt Maduro is, he's pretty good at his self-defense and his security apparatus.
He's hiding somewhere there. Do you reckon people will try and have a crack at that? I mean, that's why you put a bounty of that.
That's the reason why you do it. Yeah, I'm sure there would be. I'm sure that he's checking his food pretty carefully and his security guards.
Well, it's 50 million. It's 50 million alive. So 50 million dead, I think, would be a little easier. Adrian, are you in? Are you coming on this adventure?
Listen, I'm in. I'm fully in. I'll just say, I think it's very interesting, open conversation here. I think having him is great to understand this. There's a lot that we don't know. I've always said, listen, let's trust Trump. Let's see this through. He's had that stance on drugs. The man's never had a sip of alcohol. He runs on 4 hours of sleep, and he's fueled by Diet Coke.
When does he sleep? That's always.
He doesn't. Not much. Not much.
So, but do you think you're in touch? You have the finger on the pulse of the MAGA world, the MAGA base. This is not what MAGA voters wanted, is it? And yet another regime change potential operation and another costly long forever war. This one even closer to America's backdoor.
Let's hope that there's a trick up his sleeve and it doesn't start anything too big, like he said, stirring the hornet's nest. Let's hope that's the case. I think, again, this is like a significant play for his war on drugs and his stances in that, and I think that he's trying to make moves here. But yeah, I mean, interesting to hear this conversation, so I appreciate that.
Colonel, I want to talk about Pete Hesketh. Obviously, leaving aside his little difficulties left him at RF Millfield today with a broken plane, he's generating a lot of heat from Pentagon reporters for this new rule that they won't be able to actively solicit information from military officials that hasn't been formally cleared. That strikes me as an almost impossible ask and completely in breach of the First Amendment.
Well, 100%. And I was really surprised to see that even Fox News has pushed back on that. They said, we will not sign that, along with CNN, NBC, and several others. So it's one of the rare times you see both right and left media get together on this and push back on something. I think it's a terrible idea, and I don't know why they would have wanted to do that or why they think they can get away with it. Because basically what you're saying is you are no longer the free press. You will only report what we tell you, or you'll lose your credentials.
Yeah.
That was the big threat. And of course, nobody wants to lose their access to the Pentagon. But if you also don't have the freedom, then you have some real problems. So I don't think this is going to fly.
More broadly in the veterans community, in the military community, in the wider world at which you focus on, how is he rated, Pete Hesketh?
And the people that I've talked to, it's actually pretty bad. They think that it's kind of like a lower ranking soldier that suddenly got in charge of all. He got to lecture all these generals, et cetera. That he's really good at demonstrative and speech making, but not really good at actually doing the job. The Secretary of Defense is not held in very high esteem.
And I don't suppose the generals want to go back on the bleep test quite yet. What did you make of the Secretary of changing the department to the Department of War? Is that?
Yeah, I think I was big time against that. I mean, that we're supposed to have our armed forces to defend our country, and that's the reason they called it that. And when you say that we need to be more offensive, which the president did, that kind of made me cringe a little bit because we're pretty offensive already. And when you try to say, hey, we want to go because we want to win wars, look, we didn't fail to win wars because of the name. It had nothing to do with it. It had to do with the fundamentals on the ground.
Colonel Davis, thank you for joining us. Fascinating chat there. Adrian as well, thank you for coming. I'm going to come back on your show out here, if you'll have me. Right, don't go anywhere. Isabel Brown's up next. Are the kids all right? Don't go away. Welcome back to Harry Cole Saves the West. And don't forget, you can subscribe on YouTube. You won't want to miss that. Harry Cole Saves the West. Go on it right now, click on it, subscribe, and make me very happy. So, the kids, it turns out, are all right. Rather right-wing. Across Britain and America, Gen Z isn't marching left anymore. It's breaking right. Young men especially are ditching woke politics for populism, nationalism, and a healthy dose of anti-establishment rebellion. They've watched their elders cancel and scold and censor, and you know what? They've had enough. For them, the real rebellion now is free speech, faith, borders. It's the first generation where it's cooler to quote Donald Trump than terror goblin Greta Thunberg. So what's really behind the rise of this young right? Gen Z conservative firebrand herself, Isabel Brown, host of the Isabel Brown Show, is in the studio with us. What's going on? There's hope. There's hope for the kids.
There's been a lot of hope for a while. There's a few of us that have been singing through the megaphone for a long time to be paying attention to Gen Z. I wrote a book on the subject that came out last spring in advance of the election about how Gen Z was going to save America, and then at that time was laughed off set by virtually every television, radio, and podcast network, insisting we all had purple hair and 37 genders. But it turns out, as we found out in November, Gen Z is the most conservative generation America has seen since World War II. Not just politically, which is a huge win, but culturally too. We want to get married, we're eating real food, we're going back to church, we're moving out of big cities. And there seems to be this renaissance of Western civilization again, led by young people.
Can you pinpoint a moment where everyone started to wake up in time? I kind of think you're going to look back at the last 10 years and some of the madness we've had. We'll get onto the gender stuff in a minute, but some of the cancel culture, the censorship, the hysteria, the group herd mentality. It's kind of like we're going to look back at the last 5, 6, 7 years as almost like a sort of Salem witch hunt blip in history where everyone goes, yeah, well, that was really weird. What the hell happened there?
Yeah.
When did the tide start to turn?
I sure hope we look back on this as a moment of insanity instead of our future, and I think that will depend on the continued activism of young people. But it's very difficult to pinpoint a specific point in time because this has been a result of efforts for a very long time from people like Charlie Kirk, who saw the vision way ahead into the future, knowing we had to plant little seeds along the way to change people's minds. Ultimately, though, I think COVID was such an important turning point for young people.
You can't lock people level up for
realizing, your voice matters, what you're learning in school matters, the relationships you have should be in person, they shouldn't be through a screen, and that was a great opportunity for young people to look in the mirror.
Do you think that the sort of fundamental, sort of almost like electric shock therapy from the state is that actually you give it about, go, hang on, especially young people, the least at risk from the disease, being made to ask the biggest sacrifices of it? And do you think that has had a sort of scarring effect on
Oh, absolutely, undoubtedly. If you're watching young people be told they have to do something in any era of history, we're naturally rebellious in our young years, and I think it was an opportunity to say, hang on a second, should I really trust the experts and blindly follow the science if the science is the opposite of what we're hearing on cable television? You
were at the White House last night for the Charlie Kirk medal ceremony. Again, astonishing scenes like we saw in Arizona for his funeral. The Trump administration really does seem to be picking up and running with this idea of notion that it's, there is a turning point. There is something is happening out there, to coin a phrase which Nigel Farage uses a lot in London. Is there an element of sort of political advantage being played here? Is there an element of politics? Obviously, J.D. Vance is joining the speaking tour, the Turning Point speaking tour. Are we seeing the sort of almost the political and electoral battle to capitalise on this change already starting?
If anything, I think this is a transcendence of the political fight that we've seen Charlie be fighting for such a long time. We already were trending in that direction. Young men overwhelmingly voted for Trump and Vance to take back the White House in November, and young women already shifted 11 points toward the Republican Party from 2020 to 2024. Wow. Instead, what I think we're seeing is a revival, far more than playing politics. We're watching young people go back to church. Bible sales are up 22%.
That's
Spotify
in the UK as well.
Music is up 50% in the last few years. And J.D. Vance himself said at Charlie's memorial, he has spoken more about Jesus in the last 2 weeks than ever before in his public life, and he's not going backwards.
No, I think you can spot that. Now, look, there's some fascinating polling out. Well, not really polling, more sort of tracking data about young Americans identifying as trans and non-binary. Just reading here, 2022, nearly 7% of US undergrads called themselves something other than male or female. That has plummeted to 3.6%.
Wow.
Do you link that to what we're seeing, or what we've been previously discussing about that sort of waking up and common sense, or is there something else at play here? What do you make of it?
Oh, of course. I mean, I don't think it's in question at all that the era of the trans fad for young people is over. And that's exactly what it was, a fad. It was a social contagion that largely was driven by societal advantages given to people identifying as not really either or just putting on the trans label.
And adults willing to go along with this nonsense.
Absolutely, to give you college scholarships, preferable admission opportunities, job advantages.
And dangerous, life-changing, altering hormones and operations.
At younger and younger ages. But when we have watched people like Charlie Kirk and those in his orbit have the courage to tell young people the truth in love, that you were made in the image of God on purpose as a young man or a young woman, and real affirmative care means getting comfortable in your own skin, not needing to mutilate or castrate yourself, to love yourself when you look in the mirror. That's what we should be fighting for.
It strikes me the UK is slightly further. I've had this discussion on the show many times, that the UK is, I think, on this issue slightly further ahead in the backlash against trans ideology and the sort of associated cottage industry around it, not least shutting down the Tavistock Centre, an NHS hospital that was leading the pioneering research into all this, but actually, frankly, mutilating kids. Where do you think America is? I mean, obviously, there seems to be signs in the data, but where do you think the American public are, the political class and media class are on this? Are they still afraid to speak out of it for fear of being cancelled?
I don't think so. Cancel culture seems to be an era bygone at this point in American history, which I'm excited about. There are, of course, a few loud, really insane people that are all bought in on gender ideology, and that's not unexpected. We were so fanatical about this for the last several years that it will take time to deprogram some of the leading doctors, media personalities, educators, and so many others across our country. But it's so telling to me that driven by young people, when you see that graph going viral this week on social media, the self-identification of, I don't really know, I don't really want to be a boy or a girl is going away. It was
peer pressure, wasn't it? There was a study in the UK that showed the levels of female anorexia amongst schoolgirls declined at exactly the same time as their trans questioning and wanting to transition soared. And that's, it's peer pressure, isn't it? It's one person in the class does it, other people move on. What do you, you're right in saying it's just a fad, right?
Oh, absolutely. Abigail Schreier, investigative journalist, wrote a book on this very topic called Irreversible Damage, specifically looking at teenage girls years ago. And way ahead of her time, was canceled by the media for saying this out loud, but found it was exactly the same pattern of behavior we saw with eating disorders throughout the 90s, with suicide clusters throughout the early 2000s. When you watched one girl in a friend group in middle school or high school in America all of a sudden say, I don't think I want to be a girl, I kind of want to be either, all of a sudden that spread like wildfire throughout an entire friend group, an entire class, an entire middle school. And just to know that we have the courage, driven by young people, to walk out of their middle school classrooms when a boy is using their bathroom, as we're seeing in Oregon and California this last month, young people to say, thank you, Charlie Kirk, for being honest with us that I am a young woman and I can be comfortable in my own skin. I'm seeing those clips all over social media this month. It's really encouraging to see.
Let's see someone who, talking of cancel culture, won't be cancelled. Let's see what Keira Knightley had to say.
I saw your voicing Professor Umbridge in the new Harry Potter audiobooks. I was wondering, are you aware that some fans are calling for a boycott, given J.K. Rowling's ongoing campaign against trans people?
I was not aware of that, no. I'm very sorry. I think we're all living in a period of time right now. We're all going to have to figure out how to live together, aren't we? And we've all got very different opinions. So I hope that we can all find respect.
Yes, darling of the Hollywood liberal elite there, just laughing. I mean, she obviously got to the platitudes eventually, but just laughing there. Isabel Brown, that is a turning point, right? Because I reckon 3 years ago, Hollywood stars were, even the kids that J.K. Rowling has made millionaires at age 9 or whatever it was, shamefully sort of threw her to the wolves. Even the tone of that question there that was put to Keira Knightley, I've never seen J.K. Rowling campaign against trans people. She's campaigning against the harm done by it. But that was quite a moment, right? That's quite a cultural moment. Exactly what you said. It
was.
Even Hollywood have gone, oh no, you know what? This is nonsense.
The posing of that question was immediately what struck me as well, because if you've been paying attention for longer than 5 seconds and reading J.K. Rowling's own tweets, clearly she's not campaigning against anyone. She's campaigning for the existence of women and watching the erasure of that happen in the UK and across the West. The fact that Keira Knightley felt emboldened enough to laugh in the response to that question, that never could have happened 6 months or a year ago. And to know that as people like Emma Watson are using their platforms to say, encouraging young people to get married is a violence culturally in the West today, and J.K. Rowling is contributing to some of that negative discourse, that we have the capacity to laugh about this tells me everything I need to know. Cancel culture is dead.
Woke is dead. Isabel Brown, thank you for coming. Come back and see us soon. That was Harry Cole Saves the West. We're going to do it all over again tomorrow. Thank you for joining. Don't forget to subscribe. Woke is dead, apparently. See you next time.